Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamudiriye nashtaprayeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttam shloke bhaktir bhavati nashtaki. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 18, text number 19 onwards. Bahirajalaşayam gatva tatrosprisya vagyatah vibhajya pamitam shesham bhunjita sheshamahritam. Taking the food gathered through begging, one should leave the populated areas and go to a reservoir of water in a secluded place. There, having taken a bath and washed one's hands thoroughly, one should distribute portions of the food to others who may request it. One should do this without speaking. Then, having thoroughly cleansed the remnants, one should eat everything on one's plate, leaving nothing for future consumption. So, this is for sannyasis, how they should honor the food. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains that a saintly person should not argue or quarrel with materialistic persons who may request or demand part of his foodstuff. The word vibhajya indicates that one should give something to such persons to avoid disturbance. And then offering the remnants to Lord Vishnu, one should eat everything on one's plate without saving food for the future. The word bahi indicates that one should not eat in public place, and vagyata indicates that one should eat silently, meditating upon the Lord's mercy. So this is our scriptures explaining everything, how everybody should live, and basically idea is prepare for spiritual destination. Ekashcharin mahimetam nihsanga sanyatendriya atma creed atmarat atmavana samadarshana. Without any material attachment, with senses fully controlled, remaining enthusiastic and satisfied in realization of the Supreme Lord and his own self, the saintly person should travel about the earth alone. Having equal vision everywhere, he should be steady on the spiritual platform. So one who remains attached to material sense gratification cannot be steady in the process of chanting Hare Krishna. Being shackled by illusory desires is not able to fully control the senses. Actually, one should take shelter of devotional service to Lord Krishna 24 hours a day. For by such service, one remains within the scope of spiritual reality. By chanting and hearing the holy names of the Lord along with the Lord's glories and pastimes, one naturally drifts away from the field of material sense gratification. So the purpose is by remaining detached from sense gratification, and by getting attached or engaged in spiritual activities, especially devotional service, chanting, then one makes steady progress. Good association with Lord Krishna and his devotees automatically vanquishes useless material association, and one is able to carry out the Vedic injunctions meant to lift the conditioned soul out of the material world and onto the liberated platform of Krishna consciousness. So, good association with Krishna and his devotees. And in that association, one engages oneself in chanting and other services of Krishna, then one can lift himself from material to the spiritual world. Rupa Goswami has said in his Updeshamrita, offering gifts in charity, accepting charitable gifts, revealing one's mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially, accepting prasadam and offering prasadam are the 6 symptoms of love shared by one devotee and another. So this is how one should associate. In inquiring confidentially, means inquiring about the spiritual life, how to make progress. One who thus learns to associate with the Lord's devotees actually remains insulated from the contamination of material life. By pure association, one gradually understands the name, form, qualities, associates, pastimes, and devotion service of Lord Krishna. And thus, even in this lifetime, one can become a resident of the spiritual world. So, even in this lifetime, one lifetime only, in the association of pure devotees, there is no material contamination and no useless discussion, since all pure devotees are fully engaged 24 hours a day in the loving service of the Lord. By the influence of such devotees, one develops equal vision, samdarshan, and sees the realized knowledge of Krishna consciousness everywhere. As one begins to understand his eternal relationship with Lord Krishna, he becomes Atmavan, situated in his constitutional position. An advanced Vaishnava, constantly enjoying the mellows of loving devotion service and carrying out the mission of the Lord on the earth, is Atma Krida, or one who enjoys life within the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. The advanced devotee remains constantly attracted to the Supreme Lord and his devotees and is therefore Atmarat, or fully satisfied by constant engagement in devotion service. So one cannot possibly develop the exalted qualities mentioned here without becoming an unalloyed devotee of the Lord Krishna. One who is envious of the Lord and his devotees becomes attracted to bad association, gradually loses control of the senses, and falls down into the network of impious life. The innumerable varieties of non devotees, like branches sprouting from the single tree of enviousness of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and the association should be given up by all means. So association of non-devotees have to be given up, and at the same time, association of devotees is what we should be aspiring for. So association actually means when we get influenced by that person. So it's not that we remain completely cut off from the material world. So, but it's like we don't get influenced by them. In fact, we have to give others our association. So they get influenced by our service, our Krishna consciousness, our chanting. That's the whole association. So it's not like no associating with materialistic people means not even talking to them. No, we have to preach. But not getting influenced by their mood, by their viewpoints, by their activities or their desires. We should not get influenced by that. Without unalloyed devotional service to the Lord, one loses touch with the desire and mission of the personality of Godhead and becomes attracted to worshipping the wonderful male and female creations of the Lord's illusory energy. Means demigods, demigoddesses, celebrities, politicians, prostitutes, etc. In this way, one foolishly considers some things besides Lord Krishna to be supremely wonderful. Actually, Lord Krishna is the only true object of worship for those desiring to experience unlimited beauty and pleasure. By seriously taking to Krishna consciousness, one can realize a transcendental position of Lord Krishna and gradually develop all of the qualities mentioned in this verse. So, the qualities that are mentioned is Atmavan, Samdarshana, Samyatindriya, so many. And that's only possible for a devotee. Vivikta Kshema Sharanu Madhbhava Vimalashaya Atamanam Chintayedekam Abhedena Maya Muni. Dwelling in a safe and solitary place, his mind purified by constant thought of me, the sage should concentrate on the soul alone, realizing it to be non-different from me. The one who is engaged exclusively in the devotional service of the Lord in one of the five principal relationships is to be known as a pure Vaishnava. Because of his advanced stage of love of Godhead, a pure devotee is able to constantly chant the glories of the Lord without material hindrance. He is not interested in anything except Lord Krishna and never considers himself to be qualitatively different from the Lord. One who is still attracted by gross material body and subtle material mind, which covers the eternal soul, continues to see himself as different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So different means we both are spiritual, but obviously he is infinite and we are infinitesimal. We are just very, very minute. One who ignores the injunctions of Vedic literature uselessly wastes his sense activity in illusory material activities. He falsely considers himself to be different from Lord Krishna and therefore imagines that he possesses an interest independent of the Lord's interest. There is no possibility that such a person can achieve steadiness in life because the material field of action is constantly being shifted and transformed by the disturbing influence of time. If a devotee begins to cultivate an interest apart from the loving service of the Lord, his meditation on his oneness with the Lord will be disturbed and overturned. So, when the mind deviates from the lotus feet of the Lord, the duality of material nature again becomes prominent within the mind, and one resumes a work program based on the three modes of material nature. One who is not fixed in one's own relationship with the Supreme Lord cannot be fearless or steady and is deprived of the shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. So the idea is one should remain steady, fixed up in devotion service, in the spiritual practices. And that is possible when becomes detached from material activities of sense gratification. अन्वीक्षेतात्मनो बन्धं मोक्षं च ज्ञाननिष्ठया बन्ध इन्द्रियविक्षेपो मोक्ष एषां च संयमः. By steady knowledge, a sage should clearly ascertain the nature of soul's bondage and liberation. Bondage occurs when the senses are deviated to sense gratification, and complete control of the senses constitutes liberation. This is so senses is control of the mind. By carefully understanding one's eternal nature, one will not again be bound up in the shackles of material energy. And by constant engagement in the service of the absolute truth, one is liberated. Then the flickering material senses can no longer drag on into the false consciousness of being a material enjoyer. Such steady sense control gives one relief from the harassment of material sense gratification. So again and again, we have to contemplate, we have to introspect. Where am I? What I'm doing? And am I really engaged in the service of the absolute truth of the Lord? And if not, I means not just the body, but the mind also. And if it is not engaged, we have to bring it in the service of the Lord. Tasmanyamya Shadvargam Madhbhavin Charin Muni Virakta Kshudra Kamebhyo Labdhavatmani Sukham Mahat. Therefore, completely controlling the five senses and the mind by Krishna consciousness, a sage having experienced spiritual bliss within the self should live detached from insignificant material sense gratification. So, completely controlling the five senses and the mind by Krishna consciousness. So, that's the only way to control. No other way we can control. Puragrama Vrajana Sarthan Bhikshartham Pravishanscharit Punya Desha Sarit Chaila One Ashram Vatim Mahim. The sage should travel in sanctified places by flowing rivers and within the solitude of mountains and forests. He should enter the cities, towns, and pasturing grounds and approach ordinary working men only to beg his bare sustenance. So otherwise he should remain in the forests and the mountains. According to Srila Sridhar Swami, the word Pura refers to cities and towns with shopping centers, markets, and other commercial enterprises, whereas Gram refers to smaller towns lacking such facilities. The Vanaprastha sannyasi trying to become free from material attachment should avoid those who are working day and night for sense gratification, approaching them only to engage them in necessary acts of charity. Those who are preaching Krishna consciousness all over the world are understood to be liberated souls, and therefore they constantly approach the materialistic living entities to engage them in the devotion service of Lord Krishna. However, even such preachers should strictly avoid contact with the materialistic world when not actually necessary for advancing the mission of Krishna consciousness. The injunction is that one should not deal unnecessarily with the materialistic world. Hmm. So, as Prabhupada also mentioned someplace, is the forest and the mountains, they are in the mode of goodness. And the cities, shopping area, markets, these are the mode of passion. And bars and brothels, these are in the mode of ignorance. But he said the temples of ISKCON are in transcendental area, beyond the mode of goodness. So staying there, but then go out and preach and come back to the temple in the association of devotees, in the shelter of the Lord. That's the best thing to do. So it's one has to be very careful. That's all when he goes out and preaches. Vanaprasthashrama deshvabhikshanam bhakshamacharet sansiddhyatyashva sammoha shuddha sattva shilandhasa. One in the Vanaprastha order of life should always practice taking charity from others, for one is thereby freed from illusion and quickly becomes perfect in spiritual life. Indeed, one who subsists on food grains obtained in such a humble manner purifies his existence. So the purification is getting out of the illusion and taking complete shelter of the Lord when we are taking charity from others. In the Western countries, people are generally so dull that they cannot distinguish between a saintly beggar and ordinary hippie. A saintly beggar is constantly engaged in authorized devotion service to the Supreme Lord and accepts only what he requires for his bare maintenance. The author of this book remembers entering the Krishna Consciousness Society as an arrogant university student, and that was Hirdayanand Maharaj, and being quickly humbled by the process of begging on the street on behalf of Krishna. Actually, it really makes one humble when we have to beg. Begging, obviously, we're not begging on the street for our maintenance, but like when we go out for book distribution, you're basically begging people to buy the books. We're not begging food or money for ourselves. Or like for festivals, sometimes we have to go and collect money, and literally we have to beg, we have to convince them. It just makes us humble, really humble us. This process is not theoretical, but actually purifies one's existence by forcing one to offer respect to all others. Unless one offers respect to others, one's begging will be fruitless. Also, by begging, one will not eat very sumptuously. This is good because when the tongue is controlled and other senses are quickly pacified, Vanpra should never give up the purifying process of begging for his food. And ordinary people should not foolishly equate a lazy bum living at the cost of others with a saintly beggar engaged in higher duties for the Supreme Lord. But the problem is these days, it's not really clear if it is a lazy bum who is begging and who don't want to do anything, or if it is a really saintly beggar. But the saintly beggars, sadhus, when they come and asking for something, they try in return to give something, give some advice, give some instruction for a spiritual benefit. Not like they're going to curse us if we don't give them anything. So that is a saintly beggar. न तद वस्तु तया पश्य दृश्यमानं विनश्यति असक्त चित्तो विरमे diham utra chikirchitat. One should never see as ultimate reality those material things which obviously will perish. With consciousness free from material attachment, one should retire from all activities meant for material progress in this life and the next. One may doubt how a gentleman can retire from family life and live as a beggar, eating meager foodstuffs. The Lord here responds by stating that sumptuous or palatable foods, along with all other material objects, such as body itself, should never be seen as ultimate reality, since they are obviously perishable items. One should retire from material programs destined to enhance the quality of one's illusion, both in this life and the next. So everything is temporary. They're all going to perish, whatever we have, even the body. We see so many people are dying around us. Every day we see them, but we still don't realize or don't want to think of that. We also going to die one day, and whatever we have, we're going to leave it. Only thing that is going to go with us is our karma, whether it is pious or impious activities or whether it is devotional service. Devotional service is eternal. It will never, I mean, whatever we have done in this life, it will always remain with us. But pious, impious activities will get the reactions sometimes in for newer lives, next lives, whichever life, I don't know which life. But then it will also go away. Only bhakti will remain with us. यते तदात्मनि जगन् मनो वाक् प्राण संहतं सर्वं मायेति तर्केण स्वस्थ्यक्त्वा न तत्. One should logically consider the universe which is situated within the Lord and one's own material body, which is composed of mind, speech, and life air, to be ultimately products of the Lord's illusory energy. Thus situated in the self, one should give up one's faith in these things and should never again make them the object of one's meditation. And this is Varnashram Dharma. This is how one makes progress. Every conditioned soul considers the material world to be the object of his personal sense gratification and therefore considers the material body to be his actual identity. Lord Tyaktva indicates that one must give up one's false identification with the material world and the material body, since both are merely products of the illusory potency of the Lord. One should never again meditate on the material world and body as objects of sense gratification, but rather should become situated in Krishna consciousness. Looking at things from the eternal point of view, this world is simply illusory. The material energy of the Lord is devoid of consciousness and thus cannot be the basis of actual happiness. The Supreme Lord Himself is the only absolutely conscious entity. He is absolutely self sufficient, standing alone as Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. So He alone can give us the actual perfection of life and the actual happiness that we are looking for. We think in this material world by buying things or by possessing some things or by suppressing things or by controlling some things, we think we can be happy. Never going to happen. Because everything is temporary. Even our control will be temporary. Our possessing something will be temporary. It cannot give happiness, permanent happiness that we are looking for. That's only available, only possible in spiritual spirituality in the spiritual world. Okay, so I guess I can stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments? Okay, so you all have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Prabhupada.
Thank you.